Two roads diverged in a yellow wood, and sorry I could not travel both. And be one traveller, long I stood, and looked down one as far as I could, to where it bent in the undergrowth. Then took the other, as just as fair, and having perhaps the better claim, because it was grassy and wanted wear, though as for the passing there, had worn them really about the same. And both the morning equally lay, and leaves no step had trodden black. Oh, I kept the first for another day, yet knowing how the way leads on to way, I doubted if I should ever come back. I shall be telling this with a sigh, somewhere ages and ages hence. Two roads diverged in a wood, and I took the one less traveled by, and that has made all the difference. The theme of the poem, The Road Not Taken, is that everyone has to make difficult choices, such as the traveler in the poem who has to choose between one of the two roads. Robert Frost received inspiration for this poem from the walks he took with his friend Thomas. They would take long, aimless walks down many roads, and were indecisive about where they would end up. This poem contains simple diction, which is easy to comprehend, but also contains lots of imagery and descriptive words. The first example of imagery in the poem is in the first sentence. Two roads diverged in a yellow wood is an example of visual imagery. The next example of imagery is because it was grassy and wanted wear, which is more visual imagery within Frost's poem. More imagery is shown in the line, and both that morning equally lay, and leaves no step had trodden black. This imagery suggests that it is autumn season. Frost's tone in the poem The Road Not Taken is indecisive because he is faced with a difficult choice. The mood of the poem is unclarity, as the entire poem is thought-provoking. The symbols in this poem are the roads, which represent life choices that are mentioned in the theme, and the undergrowth, which represents aspects of the speaker's future that are unclear, such as difficult choices that he's not sure about.
Whose woods these are I think I know. His house is in the village, though. He will not see me stopping here to watch his woods fill up with snow. My little horse must think it queer to stop without a farmhouse near, between the woods and a frozen lake, the darkest evening of the year. He gives his harness bells a shake to ask if there is some mistake. The only other sound's the sweep of easy wind and downy flake. The woods are lovely, dark and deep, but I have promises to keep, and miles to go before I sleep, and miles to go before I sleep. The theme of stopping by woods on a snowy evening is that choices have consequences, such as in the poem, the traveler has a choice to stay in the cold woods or to stay in a village. Both have consequences and benefits. The author's background relates to the poem because the poem takes place in a wooded setting, which Robert Frost is very familiar with because he used to live in a rural area. Also, the dark woods connect to the depression and mental illnesses that ran in his family. Robert Frost's diction is very simple, as if he's telling a story. However, it does contain symbols that are thought-provoking. The sentence, the darkest evening of the year, in Stopping by Woods on a Snowy Evening, stanza 2, is an example of visual imagery. Another example of imagery is in the sentence, he gives his harness bells a shake, which is an example of auditory imagery. The sentence, the only other sounds the sweep of easy wind and downy flake, is an example of imagery in which tactile and auditory imagery is shown. The sentence, "The woods are lovely, dark, and deep," is the last example of Robert Frost's imagery, in which visual imagery is shown. The tone in Stopping by Woods on a Snowy Evening is dismal, while the mood is depression. An example of tone and mood in this poem would be The Darkest Evening of the Year. The tone and mood also represent Robert Frost's depression throughout his life. The symbols in Stopping by Woods on a Snowy Evening are the dark woods and the solitary traveler. The dark woods symbolizes death, which is a consequence of choosing to stay in the woods rather than being in the village. The solitary traveler symbolizes Robert Frost because he was always lonely and isolated from society.
Turn left at the fork in the road. Turn left! I don't believe that.